were unable to join us last night, let me give you just a brief overview of what the next few nights looks like. Tonight, tomorrow, and Thursday evening, we will offer 3 virtual presentations each evening, beginning at 5:30, 6:30, and 7:30, on a variety of topics regarding the college search and application process. Last night, we had 3 presentations that are all recorded, and if you weren't able to join us live last night, you can find those recordings on the McQuaid website, as you will also be able to find the remaining presentations from the rest of the week. So thank you for joining us. Quick overview of tonight. I will be doing the first presentation of the evening, which is geared towards middle school parents. And the title of my workshop is called Early College Planning. At 6:30, Joe Manhertz, who's the Director of Athletics at St. Bonaventure University, he'll be joining us to do a presentation called Practical Advice for the College-Bound Student Athlete. And then at 7:30, Janice Schutzow, who's the Executive Director of Financial Aid at Hamilton College, will be joining us to do a presentation on an overview of the financial aid system. So a busy night tonight, and again, three workshops tomorrow and 3 other workshops on Thursday evening. So let me get started on my presentation. Again, the title of my presentation is called Early College Planning. And at the risk of making parents of middle schoolers very nervous, I want to preface this by saying that this conversation by no means is meant to stress you out and to get you going on this college search, when your kids are at the ripe age of 12 or 13. But I do think for someone who's been in college counseling for 40 plus years, oftentimes I feel that people get the message and the information that's needed too late in the process. And I think we might be guilty of that a little bit also. We do a lot of programming for parents of 11th graders and parents of 12th graders. But I honestly think that you really can't start this process too early. You have to temper it with some limitations and temper the intensity and the pace. But I do think it's a good idea not only for students but for parents to begin the process early, educate yourself on the trends that are out there, educate yourself on college admissions and the various the various branches of college admissions, from financial aid to testing to, how the process basically works, so that when your son, if you fast forward your son's life a couple of years, you're in a good position and a little bit about what to expect. So that's the purpose of my presentation tonight. My hope is that, in the next 40 minutes or so, I will leave you with a variety of things that I think you should be mindful of regarding the college search process. My wife is a middle school counselor in Fairport, and talking to her about this presentation, and I'm excited about doing it. But she reminded me, she said, she says, the middle schoolers are at a great age, those 7th and 8th graders and 6th graders. She said, they're too little to be big, but they're too big to be little. So I'm going to try to keep that in mind and not get too far ahead of me and not, lower this down, too much. So here we go. First of all, let's talk about a timeline. So again, especially if for parents, this is your first time through this process, just give me a little bit of a timeline. And I'll work backwards. In the senior year of high school, that's when kids are submitting their college applications. And, here we sit, it's December 6th, and probably 95% of our kids, our seniors here at McQuaid, have completed their college applications. Maybe that's a little bit high, maybe somewhere between 90 and 95% have completed their college applications. Jeff Griffin, my colleague here in the college counseling world, we kind of push our kids to be done prior to Thanksgiving. That's our goal for the vast majority of them. So if you work backwards from there, a lot of kids are doing their research and they're visiting and digging in and really getting down to what schools they're going to apply to in the midpoint of their junior year. That's when they really start in earnest doing their solid research and prepping for the college search process. At McQuaid, the way that the counseling office is set up is our boys have a school counselor through the duration of their time here in high school. They have a middle school counselor, who's Mr. Pieri, And then when they get to the high school level, they have a school counselor, either Mrs. Snyder, Mrs. Gordon, or Mr. Allen. And those three folks stay with the kids all the way through their high school career. At the midpoint of junior year, Mr. Griffin and I, the two college counselors, we kind of swoop in and we start doing everything college related with the kids through the second half of junior year and senior year. So essentially for the last year and a half that students are here, they have two counselors. They have a school counselor and they have a dedicated college counselor. And Jeff Griffin and I, in the spring of junior year, we do a series of college planning seminars aimed at educating our boys about the college search process. Okay? So that's a little bit of the timeline. Junior year is a big year for kids taking standardized testing. Most of our boys are going to take their SATs and or their ACTs in the spring of their junior year, and then they're going to repeat them when they come back in the fall of their senior year. Okay? So that's just a little bit about the timelines. Let me touch on some things that I think are really important that you need to be aware of as parents of middle schoolers. The course selection process is extremely important. And when kids get to the end of the line and they're applying to colleges, one of the major things that colleges look at when trying to decide whether they're going to accept or reject a student is the level of difficulty and the rigor in the student's transcript. What type of courses did that student take during their time here at McQuaid Jesuit? Now, we're pretty fortunate here. We have a wide array of courses, higher level courses. We offer 21 different advanced placement level courses, which I'll talk about in a bit. And kids have to have a certain prerequisite in courses to be able to take those tests, in those courses, I'm sorry. So one of the things you're going to hear as you move forward throughout this process is the importance of the courses that the boys take during the time here at McQuaid. Now, does that mean they have to run out and take 15 advanced placement classes? They do not. But if they're a talented student, and we offer 21 advanced placement courses here at McQuaid, and they don't avail themselves of any of those, that's a negative. And it's going to be viewed as such in the college admissions world. So if you work backwards, oftentimes the kids will get to their junior year and they'll want to take an AP course, but they don't have the prerequisite in the preceding course that would allow them entrance into that course. So that's why performance in the early years of high school is really important, right? Because they're taking the prerequisites that will allow them to take the higher level courses as they move forward, right? Our graduation requirements here are pretty stringent, as they should be. But most of our kids they're all taking 4 years of English and 4 years of social studies. We require 3 years of math and 3 years of science. Most of our boys are taking 4 years of math and 4 years of science. Foreign language, we require 3 years. We require a year of art or music, health, phys ed, et cetera. So it's really important, the courses that kids pick as they move forward. In 8th grade, there are some high school level courses that our kids take in 8th grade. They may be taking, algebra in 8th grade, or they may be taking, an advanced or accelerated science class in 8th grade. Those courses count on a high school transcript. So you're starting to build your transcript as you move throughout high school. The first advanced placement level course that kids can really take is in 10th grade, where they have an opportunity to take advanced placement world history. It's one of the social studies options that they have in 10th grade. So I think it's important to be mindful of the curriculum offerings that we have here at McQuaid. I think it's important to understand that when colleges start reviewing students' applications, one of the things they look very, very heavily at is the rigor of courses that the student take during his time here at McQuaid. Okay. I also think it's important to have a balance. So oftentimes, kids will hear us say, taking those higher level courses is really important. And it is. But kids also have to have a balance in their life. The 15, 16, 17-year-olds need to be able to live like 15, 16, and 17-year-olds. And sometimes you can overdo it. Sometimes we have kids taking 4 or 5 APs, and it can become counterproductive also. So striking a balance academically, socially, athletically, musically, artistically, whatever you're involved in, I think is really important. Laying out a 4-year plan, I think, is important. Now that the 4-year plan may change as your son grows older and is exposed to more things here, and they might find like all of a sudden they take a robotics class and take a big interest in that, or they fall in love with our music offerings or our art offerings or our computer science offerings or whatever. But I think laying out a plan is important. So let me give you an example. So let's say if you're an 8th grader right now and you're taking algebra, if you're laying out that math plan for the next 4 years, the typical pattern there would be 9th grade, you take geometry. 10th grade, you take algebra 2 algebra 2 trig. After that, you take pre-calculus. Then your senior, you could take either AP calculus or college calculus or statistics. You have a variety of things. But I think being aware of the course offerings is important as you lay out your plan. All right. So for instance, let's say a student's taking, biology or earth science. The typical pattern would be they go from earth science to biology to chemistry to physics, and then perhaps they're taking an AP bio or chem or physics or environmental science or forensics, et cetera. So again, not to beat that to death, but I do think it's important to understand the course offerings that we have here at McQuaid, and try to lay out a 4-year plan the best that you can. And the counselors are here to certainly help you do that. So there's nothing wrong with coming in, sitting down with one of us and say, hey, can we kind of project what life might look like academically as my son moves forward here at McQuaid. Another piece of the puzzle that I think is really important to begin early planning is extracurricular activities. So I say this to our kids all the time. The colleges are looking at a variety of things when they're making their decisions. One of the factors they're going to look at is a student's extracurricular engagement while they're in high school. And what I say to kids a lot is this, colleges are trying to predict what students are going to be like when they get to college. That's basically what's happening here, right? They're looking at students' transcripts and how did they perform in high school. They're looking at their extracurriculars, how did they perform, what were they involved in, et cetera. And what they're basically doing is they're taking a guess, right? They're making an educated guess. And essentially what they're saying is the best predictor as to how a student is going to be, how a student is going to behave and perform in college is how the student behaved and performed in high school. And that's really all they have to go by. So when the colleges see a student who was disengaged and really not involved in his school or his community as he went through his high school years, they pretty much can assume that that's how the student is going to act when he arrives on a college campus. And that's usually not what most colleges are looking for. All right, they're looking for kids who will enrich their campus community, who will bring some diversity of interests and thoughts and majors and viewpoints and backgrounds to the community to make it a pretty rich environment, right? So again, when they see that a student hasn't really been overly involved in high school, they're a bit concerned that that's how that student is going to be in the college campus, right? So a couple common mistakes that I think people make is, kids think they have to have this 17-page activity resume that lists everything imaginable. And quite frankly, no one is really looking for that. It's more of a quality over quantity. Colleges are looking for, okay, what are a couple things that this boy is really passionate about? What has he done outside of school with some consistency? I mean, it may be your son has responsibilities at home, either helping out at home with younger siblings, or just has your basic responsibilities around the house. They may have a part-time job, They may be in music. They may be involved in arts. They may be involved in athletics. They may volunteer, whatever. But the colleges are looking for a couple of things that kids were passionate about and committed to and can show evidence of that. They love continuity. So if a student has been in the band for 4 years, they like that. If a student has taken 5 years of karate lessons, they like that. If you've taken piano since you were 10 years old, you've stuck with it, they like that. You've played tennis throughout your 4 years in high school, they like that. So they look for a little stick-to-itiveness, they look for a little continuity, and they look for engagement. So starting to build your activity resume early is a good idea. And again, I say this all the time too, high school kids need unions more than anyone does because they're overworked for the most part. They're time crunched. We ask them to do a million things. We ask them to, we send a ton of homework home with them. We ask them to be involved in clubs and sports and music and drama. And, don't forget to volunteer. And, don't forget you need a part-time job. And, we kind of run them ragged and they're very, time crunched for a good part. So again, I'll go back to that balance, which I think is incredibly important. But in the extracurricular world, again, I think having a couple things or one thing that you're really passionate about is important. And keeping track of those things as you move forward. Because when you go to apply to college, part of the application is going to be listing your activities or the things you've been involved with outside of school. Another major part of the college application process is standardized testing. And again, I think it's one of those things that you really need to start planning for earlier rather than later. And there's some wide sweeping changes that are coming that are going to affect all of our students from 10th grade on, from 10th grade and below, which I'm going to address in a minute. But just to simplify things, SAT scores, ACT scores for a very, very long time have been a very important piece of the college admissions puzzle. It has changed somewhat over the last couple of years because of COVID, and how that will play out moving forward, no one really knows. But I can say with confidence that the SATs and the ACTs are going to continue to be there, and they're going to continue to be a factor in the college admissions world. And kids who fare well on those tests are going to have a marked advantage over those who don't test well or who don't take the test at all because many schools are now test optional. So let me talk a little bit about the importance of the tests, what tests are out there, and how to prepare for them. First of all, I'll tell you this. I spend an inordinate amount of time tutoring. I've done private SAT tutoring for probably 20 plus years. I teach SAT prep classes all over the place. And I will tell you that there are two types of prep for SATs and ACTs. There's short-term prep and there's long-term prep. And you probably don't need me to impress upon you that long-term prep is much more favorable than short-term prep. It's not unusual that, I'll get a phone call from someone in the Rochester area who'll say, hey, I understand you tutor. And, this might be like on a Tuesday night, I get the call and they'll say, hey, my son or daughter is testing on Saturday. Could you tutor them? And I can, but quite frankly, there's not a whole lot that I can accomplish in an hour 15 minutes to erase the fact that maybe the student hasn't read very much throughout the first 16 years of his or her life, whatever. So there's a little bit you can do short term, but honestly, long-term prep is the way to go. And I always feel hypocritical when I'm teaching my SAT prep classes and I'm talking to parents prior to the beginning of those courses. I always say to people, I say, look, honestly, if we really were doing this the right way, I'd be standing in front of you talking about this SAT stuff 3 years ago when your kids were in middle school, as opposed to when they're in 11th and 12th grade. So that's why I'm a little bit excited about having an opportunity to talk to middle school parents tonight, is that this process really needs to start early. That doesn't mean you have to run out and buy 10 SAT prep books and sign up your kids for 15 practice tests. You don't need to do that. But I think understanding the important elements in SAT and ACT prep and focusing in on those is essential. And in particular, the tests are all about reading. And, if all research shows that, kids' love of reading or the level or amount of reading that they're going to do is pretty well established by the time they're in 7th or 8th grade. If reading isn't really important to them up until that point, the odds of them becoming voracious readers from 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade is probably not going to happen. So I can assure you that these tests are heavily, heavily biased in favor of kids who read a lot. And the best preparation that you can give your kids for these SATs and ACTs or any of these standardized tests is have them read. Read anything they can get their little hands on. They don't have to read, classics or Shakespeare. Read stuff that they're interested in. Make reading fun. That's how they're going to acquire language skills. That's how their vocabulary is going to grow. That's how their level of comprehension is going to increase. That's how the pace of their reading is going to develop. That's where they're going to learn grammar rules, and they're going to acquire language skills. And again, I just can't impress upon you enough the importance of reading. When I tutor kids, and it doesn't take me very long to figure out, which kids are well-read and which kids aren't. And it doesn't make them bad human beings if they're not well-read. It just means they have an uphill battle when they're taking these tests. All right. So the best thing I can tell you about test prep is read and take challenging courses. Those are two things that will prepare you well for the math part of the test. It'll prepare you well for the reading and writing part of the test. Right. All right. Having said that, let me talk a bit about the different types of tests that are out there that your sons will be exposed to. The first standardized test that kids will be exposed to is the PSAT. It's a preliminary SAT, practice SAT. The most important letter in that acronym is the P. It's a practice or a preliminary test. Okay? That test is administered typically in October of junior year. It's only offered once a year. Some schools give it in 10th grade. We will probably moving forward be giving the test in 10th grade and 11th grade. We only gave it to our 11th graders this year because the test is changing. And if we gave the PSAT in its current format to our current 10th graders, the test that they'd be taking next year is going to look drastically different, so it didn't quite make sense. But moving forward, we will most likely give the PSAT to our 10th graders and our 11th graders in October. It's usually in the middle of October. Right? The PSAT is just a shorter version of the SAT. All right. Now, again, I mentioned earlier that the PSAT is changing very drastically for our current 10th graders. So our 11th and 12th graders, they are not going to be impacted whatsoever by the change of the new, what's going to be a new digital SAT. But our 10th graders and below are going to be affected by these changes. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time telling you how the test is now because it's kind of irrelevant for middle school kids. But let me tell you what it's going to be like. All right. So starting next October for our 10th graders, when they take the PSAT as 11th graders, I should say, when our 11th graders next October test, it's going to be a digital test. It's going to be on a computer. It's going to be given here at McQuaid. It can be on their iPad or a school-issued computer. The entire test is going to be digital. No paper and pencil, all digital. It's going to be a 2-hour test as opposed to the current SAT, which is a little over 3 hours. The results that kids are going to get back, they're going to get their scores back in about 2 or 3 days, as opposed to right now where it's about 3 or 4 weeks. And it's going to be a lot less reading on the PSAT and the SAT. And it's going to be what they call an adaptive test, which is a new concept for SAT. So let me do a little bit of explaining. So the SAT and the PSAT are going to have basically 4 parts. 2 parts will be reading and writing. And so in reading and writing, they're going to have module 1 and module 2. So here's the adaptive part. So module 1 will be 27 questions, reading and writing questions. And it'll be 27 little paragraphs. There'll be a paragraph on a certain topic, and there'll be one question related to that paragraph. And there'll be 27 of those. Some will be categorized as easy, some will be categorized as medium difficulty, some will be categorized as hard. How kids perform on module 1 will dictate what type of questions they receive on module 2. Right? So in module 2, the kids who scored very well on module 1, they will get a higher level, more difficult questions on module 2. The kids who did not score as well in module 1, they will get an easier module 2. And the scoring will be based accordingly. So for instance, if you don't fare well in module 1 and you get the easier module 2, there's a ceiling on how high your score could possibly be. All right. If you score well on module 1 and you're off to the harder module 2, you're most likely going to get a higher score. So I know it might sound inequitable, but trust me, there's all kinds of metrics and math behind it, and it is equitable. All right. But that's what adaptive testing is. And that's what the PSAT is going to, and that's what the SAT is going to. All right. So there's the 2 sections of reading and writing, or the 2 modules, and it's the same exact format for math. Right. Kids will get a 22 question math module. So the module 1 will be 22 math questions with a variety of easy, medium, and hard questions. Based on their performance on module 1, they will either get a harder or an easier module 2 math. All right. So essentially, they're taking a little over an hour to do the reading and writing and a little over an hour to do the math, 2 hours, an hour shorter than the current format. Kids are going to like that, obviously. And it's all done on a computer. Right. There will be no essay. There will be nothing that has to be written. There isn't now, as a matter of fact. So everything will be multiple choice. There'll be no essays to be written at all. Kids will be able to use a calculator in the entirety of the math section. Actually, the calculator will be built right into the app that they'll be downloading on their computer to take the test. Okay. So again, PSAT, October of 10th grade, October of 11th grade. Okay. PSAT results are not sent to colleges. They're not part of the college admissions process. Okay. They're practice tests. They also are a qualifying test for certain scholarships. The most prestigious scholarships that they represent or that they qualify for are national merit scholarships. There's also a Hispanic recognition scholarship as a result of performance on PSATs. So here at McQuaid on a typical year, we might have anywhere from 2 to 4 boys who qualify for national merit scholarships based solely on their PSAT performance. All right. So that's another reason why kids take the PSAT. All right. Then the SAT. So the SAT typically it's given multiple times throughout the year. We tell kids to take the test a couple of times, usually spring of junior year, and then retake the test in the fall of their senior year. Right? And it's beneficial to take the test a couple of times, maybe 3 times, because most colleges do what's called super scoring. And super scoring means if kids take the test 3 times, colleges are going to look for their highest reading and writing score and hook it up with their highest math score, even if they come from different test dates. Okay, that's called super scoring. And that's why, like we say, we think it's beneficial for kids to take the test 2 or 3 times. Okay. And again, the change is coming to the SAT in the spring of 2024, which will be when our current 10th graders, who at that point will be 11th graders, will be taking the SAT. Okay. And again, 2-hour test, adaptive testing, can use the calculator, no essay, same stuff as the PSAT. Right? So that's the SAT. Then there's another creature called the ACT, which has been in existence for quite a long time. Over the last 10, 12 years, the ACT has grown in popularity to the point where the last 3 years, more students in the United States have taken the ACTs than have taken the SATs. Colleges will accept either or, all right? And there are slight differences between the two. So the ACT also has 4 sections. It has a reading section where kids are reading 4 fairly lengthy reading passages and then answering 10 questions about each passage. They have a grammar section that's virtually identical to the SAT. They have an hour-long math section where they have 60 questions they answer in 60 minutes. And then they have a science section, which the SAT doesn't touch at all. So the ACT science is basically another reading section that, oh, by the way, happens to be about science. And you're asked to read graphs and charts and interpret scientific data. Okay, so that's the ACTs. ACT scored on a scale of 1 to 36. The SAT has been, and in the new format, will be scored on a scale of 400 to 1600. All right, most of our kids take the SATs and the ACTs, both of them at least once, and then make a determination which way they want to go to take the second and third one. They may find the ACT more to their liking. They may find the SAT more to their liking. Okay. And again, 10, 15 years ago, the ACT was pretty much a popular test on the West Coast and maybe in the Midwest. Here in the East, it really wasn't a player at all. Now it is. All right. So again, most of our kids are taking SATs and ACTs. All right, let me talk a little bit about the state of standardized testing post-COVID, because COVID rolls around and really changed the landscape of college admissions, and in particular, changed standardized testing. So if you rewind life a couple of years ago, and if you're a junior and senior in high school at the time and you're trying to take SATs or ACTs, you weren't able to because test centers were closed. So many colleges had to pivot really quickly. And one of the metrics that they used fairly significantly in their decision-making process was now no longer an option because kids didn't have SATs or ACT scores to submit. So they went test optional. And, you know, quite frankly, I don't think many colleges really wanted to go test optional. If they wanted to, they could have done so well before COVID. And some schools did, but most of them did not. So COVID kind of forced their hand to go test optional. And like I said, took away another component of college admissions that they relied upon. All right. So now here we are, you know, coming out of COVID, and many colleges have decided that they're going to stay test optional. Some colleges have decided that they're not going to stay test optional. They're going to go back and mandate that kids take it. And for the vast majority of colleges, it's yet to be determined yet what their policy will be around testing. Okay. So here's the beauty of test optional. Kids tend to hear test optional, and I think they think, well, therefore I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to take it. And I think that's a big error that they would make if they went that way. Colleges are being truthful. They are test optional. It's not required. But if you take the test and you put down and you have a solid score, it's definitely another factor in your favor in the admissions world. In the absence of a strong test score, again, it's just one less thing that you have on your side of the ledger in terms of pluses, right? It's like if you're a captain of an athletic team, or if you're you've been in band or orchestra for 4 years, all those are pluses, right? Community service, leadership, taking solid courses, AP courses, all those are pluses. If you take those things away, you just have fewer and fewer things, you know, and your side that's going to help you get into the college of your choice, right? So we tell kids, don't fall into the trap of test optional. Take the tests, prepare for the tests, and then be strategic as to what schools you actually submit your scores to. And I won't get into all the details of that, but you know, if a student takes a test, there might be some schools that it makes sense for him to submit his scores to, and other schools where it does not make sense. You know, all schools will post their mid 50th percentile of their SAT scores on their website. So if I take an SAT and my score falls well within that mid 50th percentile, I'd be crazy not to submit my scores. If I take the SAT and a certain school I'm interested in, my SAT score does not fall within that range, that 25 to 75 percentile range, I'd be kind of crazy to submit my scores. All right, so that's what test optional is a little bit about. I don't want to spend a ton of time on that, but I do want to understand that I don't think kids should fall victim of the trap of, hey, it's test optional, therefore I don't even have to worry about taking it or preparing for it. You do have to take it, you should take it, and you really should prepare for it also. Okay. And to talk really briefly about how do you prepare for those tests, there's a million ways you can prepare. As they get older, there'll be SAT prep classes. There'll be private tutoring options. There's no shortage of things to do. There's plenty you can do it free online. There's books galore you can buy. There's computer programs. Like I said, there's no shortage of things. But early on, like I said earlier before, the best preparation you can do now is make reading on a wide variety of topics a really important part of your child's education, because that's what they're going to be doing on these tests. Kids who score well on the SAT and the ACT tend to be fairly comfortable reading about a wide variety of topics. Okay. Let me shift gears. I want to talk a little bit about financial aid. I'm not going to get into it extensively, but I do think it's important, especially early on, to have a little bit of an understanding about how this financial aid system works, especially if you're a parent and this is your first time through the process. Right? And again, I'm not going to get into all the nitty gritties of it, but because it would take forever. But let me just try to give you a basic understanding of financial aid. Sticker shock hits a lot of people. Right? If you were to just kind of go college shopping in the Rochester area, and you stumbled upon the University of Rochester and you said, hey, I wonder what it costs to go here for a year. The price tag that you're going to find is going to say about $80,000 per year. If you wander a little bit down the road to Nazareth College or St. John Fisher, and you look at their price tag, it's going to be around $50,000, $52,000 a year. If you head down 390 and you land on Geneseo's campus, a SUNY school, you're going to find a price tag around $26,000, $27,000. Okay. So there's a wide variety of financial options when it comes to colleges. Monroe Community College is going to be a lot less expensive as a 2-year school. All right. So my point is, a lot of times people get intimidated by the sticker price and say, oh, we can't apply to those schools because they cost $80,000. Right? You have to let the financial aid system work. You have to file the appropriate forms, let it play out. It's designed to make colleges affordable for kids. Does it always work that way? No, it doesn't. Right? I'd be lying to you if I said it did. But I think a common mistake people make is they shy away from the more expensive schools, thinking that it's just not going to be affordable. A place like Nazareth College, let's say, it's like the price tag there is about $55,000. Don't hold me to these numbers, but I would say that the average price that someone pays there is probably half of that, probably around $26,000, $27,000 a year. Some are paying less, some are paying more, but that's how that works. All right. Just some nuts and bolts about the financial aid system. There's two major forms that one that absolutely has to be completed. It's called the FAFSA. Stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Parents can complete that as soon after October 1 of their senior year as possible. You can't really do much prior to that. All right, that's the major form in the financial aid world. A lot of private colleges and more selective colleges, in addition to the FAFSA, there's another form that they required that's called the CSS profile. So I just want to be sure you're aware of those two forms, the FAFSA and the CSS profile. If you were to go on any college's website, colleges that receive federal aid, which is just about every college, they're mandated to, on their website, have what's called a net price calculator. So some are more extensive than others, some are pretty skimpy, but you should be able to go on a college's net price calculator and answer some basic questions about your family's finances and your son's academic interests, et cetera, and get a somewhat reasonable sense as to what your financial aid award or package might look like at that school. Will it be exact and something that they're going to hold to? Not necessarily, no. but it's a good place to start. It's called a net price calculator. And like I said, you can find that just about on any college's website. Another number that drives financial aid is what's called the expected family contribution. All right. Again, it's not the desired family contribution, unfortunately. It's called the expected family contribution. So when you fill out your FAFSA in the fall of senior year, they crunch those numbers. They take a snapshot of your finances, your income, your assets, your debt, et cetera. And they essentially come back and say to you, okay, family X, based on the financial picture that we have of your family, we feel that this is your expected family contribution. This is the amount that we feel you should be able to contribute to your child's education. All right. So knowing or having a rough idea what your expected family contribution is going to be is very important. And you can go online, you can Google EFC calculators. There's no shortage of them online. And you can start noodling around, excuse me. And you can get a pretty good estimate as to what your expected family contribution is going to be. So I think that's something that would be important as you start this process early. A couple other things I wanted to just run by you is for early college planning is, the search process. When do you start? How do you search? And again, I don't think it's too early. I don't think it's ever really too early to start. The level of intensity determines, is it too much? I really don't think in middle school you have to make this a centerpiece of, of your world right now. But, the beauty of living in Rochester is you could go, a half hour in many different directions and hit like 7 different colleges with, you go see RIT, right? Large technical school. You go down, you go over to U of R, you get a world-class research school. You go down to Geneseo, you get a smaller, rural, very good, public university, right? So I think getting kids exposed, getting them to see college campuses is a healthy thing. Right? Again, they don't have to dig really deep at this point, but getting them on college campuses, I think, is important. As parents, there's a lot of stuff you can do online to research schools. One of the side effects of COVID, when all of a sudden colleges were shut down, college campuses, and people weren't allowed to visit, is it forced colleges to really up their online game. So colleges now have fantastic virtual tours online. They have virtual open houses, and their online presence is so much better than it was prior to COVID. All right, so you can do an awful lot of research on a college and see an awful lot of stuff virtually. And I want to throw out 2 websites to you that I think you might find helpful regarding virtual tours and taking a virtual look at colleges. One is called UVisits. It's YOUVISITS, uvisits.com. They have just a long list of colleges that have virtual tours on there. And another one is called Campus Reel, CAMPUSREEL, Campus Reel. So UVisit and Campus Reel, 2 really good websites that will help you do some exploring online without having to jump in your car or fly all over the country to visit college campuses. Okay. So I'm going to end this like I started it and say to you, the purpose of my presentation wasn't to strike fear in you that, oh my gosh, I'm behind and my son's now 12 years old and we got to start filling out college applications and writing college essays. That was not the intent at all. My intent was quite simply to expose you to some elements of the college search process, some trends that are out there that I think are really important that you be at least mindful of and aware of as you move through McQuaid Jesuit. My fear is I don't want you to become parents of an 11th or 12th grader and be kind of, blindsided by either trends or testing or financial aid. I think if you're an educated consumer, as you go through this process, you tend to have much better luck with the process. Okay. And the last thing I'll say to you is this: I'm really proud of the counseling department we have here at McQuaid. Like I said earlier, we have school counselors and we have college counselors. And luckily here for us is that our school counselors although they're not, quote, like I said, they're not called college counselors, they still have a wealth of knowledge and experience around what it takes to to get into colleges and to prepare. So we're blessed in that regard, with which I think is a pretty talented counseling office here. And I would really encourage you to lean on the counselors as you go through this process. Call us, email us, come in and meet with us. Let us lay out a 4-year plan for you. Let's talk early on in the game about the college admissions process as opposed to waiting too late. Okay. And again, we try to run a lot of evening programs for parents, and you'll see those as you move through the high school, that there's no shortage of opportunities to hear us talk at you about a variety of topics. So again, thank you for joining me. Again, we have 2 other seminars this evening. Coming up at 6:30 is Joe Manhertz, athletic director from St. Bonaventure University, talking about practical advice for the college-bound student athlete. And then following Joe's presentation at 7:30, Jan Schutzau, the executive director of financial aid at Hamilton College, will be on giving an overview of financial aid. So I hope you can join us either the remainder of tonight and then again tomorrow night and Thursday night. And thank you for being with us. And I'm going to sign off now, and we'll be back on in about 15 minutes. Thank you.
Everybody,
Hello there, Mr. Manhertz.
how are you?
I'm good. We are live here. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I almost put on my Fairport football sweatshirt to troll everyone. I decided against it.
Well, let me do some quick introductions. First of all, thank you for doing this tonight, and for parents and students that are out there, thank you for joining us for our second of four evenings of our College Information Week. We're really blessed to have Joe Manhertz with us tonight to give us a presentation. Joe actually was a former student of mine at Fairport High School years ago, which makes me pretty ancient. But he's had a pretty storied career post-high school. Joe went to Colgate University, played basketball and football at Colgate. And since then has been in athletic administration at a variety of places, including Syracuse University, Colgate, Ohio State, recently Duke, and now is the proud athletic director at St. Bonaventure University, which here at McQuaid, we have no shortage of St. Bonaventure grads, Joe. So thank you for doing this for us. And Joe's topic tonight is practical advice for the college-bound student athlete. So Joe, I'm going to mute myself. I'll be right here, but I'm going to turn these folks over to you, and they're all have at it.
Well, thanks, John. It's I can call you John, not Mr. Serafine now. I guess I'm old enough to do that, but I'll just let you guys know you've got a gem there. He's an unbelievable individual and he's helped so many kids that I know. It still hurts me that he's McQuaid, not Fairport, but I'm just so happy to be here with you guys and really be a resource for you as you navigate the next steps in college. I'll start with a couple things. I think first and foremost is as you go on your recruiting trips and you think about what folks are showing you and what they're telling you. Think about the things you go home, you pro and con, whatever school you're at. Things I tell kids is look at what they didn't show you, because everything that we show you at a college visit is what we're proud of. And you really got to think of the things that they didn't show you. Did they show you the locker room? Did they show you the weight room? Did they show you the coach's offices? Did they show you spaces where you would study? And so you really got to think about what it is. And I think as I'm talking to the kids now, this is an opportunity for you to go out and learn. And one of the things that I was told on some of my recruiting visits, I'll never, ever forget. Football was my sport. I got recruited for football and I got to play basketball. And it's a gruesome sport. And I've got a bad shoulder. I can't really throw the ball anymore. But, one thing that was said to me is, listen, the coaches will take advantage of your body. They will make sure you do everything you can when they can that's legal. And so it's up to you to make sure you take care of and take advantage of every opportunity that's given you, because never in your life will you have people waiting to help you. As a student athlete, you get to register for classes early. You get to make sure your schedule's fit so you can make practice time. And so at that aspect, really make sure you take advantage of it. You have tutors at your call. So if you're struggling with something, it's easy to fix because people are laying down and they're crossing streets and crossing roads in the middle of traffic to help you. And so it's up to you to make sure you use that. At any athletic department I've worked at, there have been ample tutors for people. So when you're struggling, if you need the help, ask for it. And I think that's one aspect of it is really making sure that you do that. And for the parents, I can tell you, as you guys send your children off to college and they're a part of a team, I would say for you, that's when you let go. I would tell you, you should never have a conversation with a coach about playing time. And if you really need to, one of the rules I ask my coaches to do, if a parent wants to talk to a coach about playing time, they got to do it with the kid in the room. And from the standpoint of this is your chance to let the kid grow and be a part of it and find solutions. Now, that being said, you should, if they're having a bad time, you should actually talk to them and help them, but help them figure out the message they want to get to the coach. Help them ask the coach what they need. You shouldn't be doing that for them. And I'm not going to make cliches about helicopter parents and things of that nature. But again, college is what sets us apart. In athletics, it sets people apart, from time management to dealing with coaches screaming and yelling at them. That parlays into the real world, as they say, as they get past college, where they can deal with terrible bosses, because we all know we deal with terrible coaches, and I can, as an aside, I've got two kids. One's a freshman down in North Carolina in high school, and another's a junior in North Carolina. And the freshman's on the JV basketball team. I think he should be on the varsity team, and I'm really upset about it. I was at a game last week, and my son wasn't playing. He's one of the most talented kids on the team. And I'm just looking at the coach. I'm sitting 5 rows behind the bench, and I'm going nuts. And I want to get up and scream, and I want to yell. I can see it. I can evaluate talent. And my kids were up here this summer. He was hanging with kids on a Division I team as a skinny little freshman. And he's playing behind 2 kids that really don't have his skill level. And I'm just sitting there going nuts. And I see the varsity coach standing in the hallway of the gym. And I jump up, I take 3 steps towards him to go just rip him a new one. Like, what are you doing? Why isn't my kid playing? Why isn't he on varsity? And I took 3 steps and I said, no, I can't do that because I'm going to ruin it for my kid. I went to the other side of the gym, sat down behind the other team, and just, I had to take it. And, the end of the story, he wound up with 16 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists because he played a little bit more in the second half. But I was ready to go nuts because I know what I see. And so I say that from the standpoint of, we all know there's bad coaches and sometimes we make the wrong choice. But again, you're going to serve your child better if you let them deal with the coaches, because coaches, they want to help. They want to build kids and they want to build character. And sometimes they just get it wrong. And sometimes it's not a good fit. But I think it's the best thing you can do is help your kid determine what it is. And I think, as you pick a school, really, really, really determine if you really like it. Because again, you can transfer. The transfer rules are out there, but I recommend you don't transfer because you take enough time to pick the right school to figure it out. And again, sometimes it doesn't work, but again, it's really take as much time as you can on the front end, so you don't have to scramble and really transfer and really get through it, because adversity is part of life, and you're going to go from being a star to not playing as much as you want to, not playing as much as you think you should. But again, I think every kid winds up where they're supposed to be. And you fight through it. The adversity of fighting through it builds character. And I think that's really important. So,
Joe, can you talk a little bit about the difference between Division I, Division II, Division III, how kids can get recruited? I think oftentimes, our high school students, they see the big time, Duke, Ohio State, Syracuse basketball on TV and the big time football. And, oftentimes that's all they know because that's all they're exposed to, and the vast majority of kids, are not playing, at that level. Right. And I think a lot of times, it's hard to hear. But I also think our job is to help kids, have a good experience when they leave high school. And sometimes that's playing Division III basketball, football, soccer, tennis, whatever it is. But can you just talk about what you see in the recruiting world? What are your coaches looking for? What differentiates that kid who could play at one level as opposed to another level?
Yeah, I think, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest things in terms of Division I versus Division III is speed. Not natural ability, because there's some natural athletes that if it's too complex or a scheme, whatever they're in terms of basketball or things of that nature. So speed is one aspect of it. But again, I think pick a school that you want to play at. Like when I was at Duke basketball didn't recruit. They selected. They went out and they picked, if they got 3 spots open, they go look at 6 kids and they select what kid are. And so how many of us are really in that category? Not many. And so as you think about what school it is, really, really hone in on what education you can get and the playing time you can get and the level you want to play at and the commitment. So the biggest difference is time commitment in terms of what you do. So if you're good enough, we've got a lot of kids here at St. Bonaventure that are student athletes because they want to say they're a Division I student athlete, but they would probably be better off playing at a smaller school, in Ithaca or a Cortland or someplace. Just come off the top of my mind, if they wanted to really truly play a lot, but to be on a team. So it's just whatever you choose to think about, but it really is. It boils down to time commitment and all of it, whatever level you're at. It really helps you develop post-playing career, after the 4 years. One of the things I talk about and I build it in my department is really picking a college isn't a 4-year decision. It's really a 40-year decision, because you build into the athletics. It gives you a network. The alumni gives you a network, but really, you're thinking about that because I think of lacrosse players at Duke. They have a pipeline to Wall Street. I think of guys I played football with at Colgate. I wouldn't give some of these guys $2 to go get me a Diet Coke and bring me change, and now they're down on Wall Street as VPs at Goldman Sachs. And so you really think about what it lines you up for. And I think there's a ton of Division III schools that will do that too. And so the glitz and the glamour of Division I, it's great. It's unbelievable. I've got pictures with the president. I've got pictures with Zion, all the guys that went through Duke with my kids, and it was amazing. We got to fly on private planes. But at the end of the day, it's really going out, getting up in the morning, going to get a workout, going to get your class, get your papers in on time, and really competing. And sometimes you compete in front of a lot of people. Sometimes you compete in front of a small amount of people, but competing is the key. And what level you want to compete at is up to you. The time commitment and the pressure is higher at Division I because there's so much money involved. And coaches, are getting paid millions of dollars and they have to win. Division III is not the same. And so Division II, so whatever level you want, it really is fun. If you just want to play and be a part of it, it's interesting. In our conference, we look at a school like Dayton, and they have football as non-scholarship. And why is that? Because there's people that just want to play football. They can't play at Ohio State, or they can't play at Ohio University. They can play at Dayton, or they can play at Division III school, but they just want to play football. And so it's non-scholarship. And so, that's the great thing about making a college choice. You can do whatever you want, wherever you want, if you're willing to go there. And so whatever you're searching for, you can find. And I think that's really important.
Joe, what about what advice would you give to a high school kid who is trying to be recruited? There's all kinds of showcases, there's huddle tapes, there's AAU tournaments, there's travel soccer, hockey. Any advice that you'd give or warnings that you'd give me? I mean, how do I become marketable to a St. Bonaventure coach if I'm a recruitable athlete?
The sad part of this is as you identify a school you want to go to, you have to go to their camps. You have to go get in front of them is the best way, because there's oftentimes, coaches are scheduled to go places, but flights get canceled and things get canceled. The travel sports industry and the showcases, that's all well and good, but you can have just as good as competition if you stayed home, if everyone stayed home versus travel. That's oftentimes that's a lot of what the parents want to do and go to nice places. But at the end of the day, if you want to be recruited, if there's a dream school, the best thing to do is go to their camps or go to their showcases. From that standpoint, there's a guy I compete against in high school. His son's a very, very good baseball and basketball player there in Rochester. And I thought he was, amazing. And he's thinking about St. Bonaventure. He came here and the coach said, we love you, but I think you need a little more season. You should probably go to junior college because the level of kid we want is a little bit more advanced than what you have. And so that hurts to hear, but it's an honest assessment, and but it might not be for us, but someone else may. And the dad called me and said, it hurts to hear that, but you just your coach just motivated my kid to go out and work that much harder. And so really make yourself marketable. Send coaches emails, send them your highlights. If you're interested in them, the best thing to do is get in front of them and make sure they see you, make sure that you can communicate with them, and let them know you're coming to their showcase on their campus. Because if a coach can recruit a kid by sitting in his office, that's what they want to do the most.
Joe, I feel like I'm constantly talking to kids about, or athletes about, being proactive in the recruiting process, and I think, like a place like St. Bonaventure, it's probably no secret. I mean, basketball is your profile sport, your high profile sport. And I'm going to guess that, Coach Schmidt probably has a larger recruiting budget than some lesser non-revenue producing sports. Maybe I'm wrong, but my point is, let's say I wanted to play, I don't know, soccer at St. Bonaventure. I'm guessing it would be beneficial for me as a student to be proactive and to reach out to the coach at St. Bonaventure and get in front of him, because he's probably not going to be able to scour the country and with an unlimited recruiting budget. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Best thing you can do is make sure you get in front of people and tell them you're interested. Send them your information. Again, with Huddle and all the stats now, it's so much easier. Back when I was getting recruited, we had to pay for a service called I can't even remember the service, but Larry Lovejoy used to pay for it, and we had to pay. I think it was $300-400 to send our clips everywhere. And, that's when you had the camcorders. Now you got video and you got Huddle and you got all these things that you can do, and so get that to them. Coaches will respond. You got to be persistent because they're going to get 40 to 50 of them. But make sure you make yours distinct and make sure you get to the top of the email chain.
Yeah, I think a mistake a lot of kids make is that they sit back, and they know they're pretty talented and they've had success at the high school level, and they think as a result, coaches are going to find them and the scholarship offers are going to come rolling in just because they're talented athletes. So again, I think it's really good for kids to hear that, they really do have to be proactive and get themselves in front of coaches. Like you said, if I'm the caliber where I'm going to be a Division I recruit at Duke, they're going to find me. I don't really have to find them too much, right? I probably don't have to call the coaches and say, hey, look at me, right? But for most kids at most schools, that doesn't really work that way.
Right. Yeah. And again, you've got competition from everyone. There's kids that are just as good, a little bit less, a little bit better, all trying for the same spots. And so how do you distinguish yourself in your email? From the standpoint of making sure that coaches know that you're serious and stick to it, because some coaches that just aren't responsive. And I would say don't blanket the coaches, send one. If there's 2 assistant coaches, forward the email you sent to the head coach so they all know, so you can each talk to each coach. Don't just send it to the head coach because he may not be in charge of recruiting and may just make the final decision. So send it to the assistant coaches. I get emails and letters sometimes, and I pass those on, but the best thing to do is go through directly to the coaches.
So can you talk a little bit about official visits versus unofficial visits, letters of intent? I think it's important for kids to understand. Somehow you get a sense as to how serious the coaches are in their recruitment of you based on some of those things. So can you just talk a little bit about, official visits? What are the NCAA rules around those as opposed to unofficial visits?
Yeah. So unofficial visits, you can make as many of those as you want. And that's what coaches like the most, because you're spending your money to come visit campus. Official visits means that we can now pay for you to come visit campus. And those have changed a little bit, and schools are backing away from those now because the NCAA has changed the rules so much, where before an official visit, you could pay for the student athlete and one parent. Now you can pay for the parent, the brother, and the sister. And so if you're getting offers for official visits where your entire family can be paid for, that school wants you. If they're asking you to take unofficial visits, they want you to come take a look. They're interested, but they want you to come test it, feel it, and see it. But official visits now, you're only allowed 5, but now it's a little bit different. The NCAA really changed the rules over the last couple of years to just be really, really kind of hands off and kind of be proactive and letting kids have more say in what they want than before.
So it's pretty safe to say that if a coach is reaching out to you for an official visit, inviting your parents and your siblings, and you can stay on campus for 48 hours, correct? And they can give you tickets to athletic events or whatever. That's a pretty good way to gauge their level of seriousness, right?
Absolutely.
Could you talk just a little bit about?
In most schools, Division III schools, they don't have the funds to do that, and so that's primarily Division I schools.
Right. Talk a little bit about the Eligibility Center and what kids need to be aware of.
Yeah, as a freshman, you should make sure that you log on and figure out exactly what you need now. With McQuaid being a great academic school that it is, I can't believe I just said that. I think you guys are going to qualify for mostly everything you need and have all the minimums. So, but it's really the Eligibility Center just tells you what classes you need to be eligible as a freshman, and so you can go on there anytime. I think you have to have, for most schools, you have to have one or two foreign languages and things. And so it just gives you an opportunity to outline exactly what it is. And then as you're talking to coaches, they'll tell you what you need for admission standards as well.
I think it's really important. So every school has courses that are approved by the NCAA Eligibility Center, and they have like a library of our courses. So for parents and students that are out there and prospective Division I or Division II athletes, you have to be mindful of the Eligibility Center and that you're taking the right courses. The vast majority of our courses here at McQuaid are NCAA eligible, but some aren't. And it's something that it's one of those things you don't want to come upon too late, where all of a sudden you're a senior and you're applying to, all of a sudden you get recruited to Division I school and you don't have the academics, to be eligible. That's not a good situation to be in.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the advantages of being in New York State. Everyone complains about the taxes, but the school districts here are so much better than they are in the South, and I can say that firsthand. But I think another key component of that is make sure when you're applying, make sure you fill out the financial aid form, the FAFSA, because that sometimes if the coaches are really sharp, they'll be able to offer you some aid from campus and what you qualify for, and then athletic aid. So they'll be able to, what they call stack athletic aid. So, we all take pride in saying, hey, little Joey got a scholarship here. Oftentimes it doesn't mean they got a full scholarship. You got some scholarship money, but the coaches that are really on the ball will see how much aid you qualify for. And then if you qualify for a lot of aid from the FAFSA, then they don't have to give you as much financial aid or scholarship aid, and they can stack it on top of that. And so that can get you a lot more. So if you don't fill out the FAFSA, the only thing you can get is the athletic aid, where you're just taking the chance that they can give you more aid overall, and it's going to make college more affordable. So that's really, really, truly important.
Yeah, so I wanted to jump on that a little bit, where you talked about full scholarships. I think a lot of times kids and families, they hear, "Oh, I got offered a scholarship." They think it's a full scholarship, and the reality is, other than in football and basketball, most sports aren't fully funded to give scholarships. So correct me if I'm wrong. I think Division I lacrosse, and I know Bonaventure has Division I lacrosse. Is it like 12? It's like 12.6 scholarships. That, am I right? That
yeah. I think it's 14. I think 14.4. And so for lacrosse, soccer, to get a full scholarship, you have to be really, really special. And that's where a lot of coaches will say, "Hey, do me this favor, qualify for this." The Ivies do it really, really well. They'll give you a lot of aid from campus, and then they're not allowed to say scholarship, but they'll stack the athletic aid on top of that. And so, the only sports that have to give full scholarships are football, basketball, volleyball, and golf. Golf in tennis, if they do give scholarships. And so,
like on the same Bonaventure men's lacrosse team, what would be the size of your roster? Basically, maybe 40 kids, maybe more.
Yeah, 42 kids. No, actually, I'm sorry, we had 54 kids this year.
So let's say you got 54 kids on your roster, and if I'm the head varsity, or if I'm the head lacrosse coach there, I somehow need to figure out how to dole out 14 scholarships to 54 kids, right? So some kids are getting nothing, some are getting a part, some are this. So that's kind of the trick there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And that's exactly what they do. They're thinking about that constantly, rolling in and rolling out. And now it's even different with the transfer portal. So as freshman athletes, it's a lot harder. I think kids in about a year and a half, 2 years, will be a lot better, because the kids that had the fifth year coach will be their eligibility will all be exhausted. So You've got kids that have an extra year that are still flooding the system.
You seen any changes post-COVID in recruiting or eligibility? Any trends you're seeing in NCAA from your time at Ohio State and Duke to Bonaventure?
The biggest trend is the transfer portal. Kids being able to transfer, not sit out a year. In terms of COVID, I just think kids are built different this time. And, one of the biggest things that I have that keeps me up at night is the mental health of kids. I think COVID really, really hit our kids a little bit different. The socialization aspect of it is coming back, but making sure kids have all the resources to say, it's okay to not be okay. And I've got a stepson that's got some anxiety and depression issues, and it's something that I never dealt with. It was always, hey, you get knocked down, get up and go harder. Sometimes it just doesn't work that way. Kids got to figure that out, and you got to make sure that they have soft landing spots to be able to do that. But I think that's the biggest aspect. The difference of COVID is just the mental health of students and employees. That's why people aren't coming back to work. And coaches are getting out. Jay Wright.
Anything you're like what would your coaches? I'm always telling kids, I say, there's a lot of good athletes out there. I always say, because draw this pyramid in recruiting, and at the bottom of that pyramid, there's tons of really talented athletes out there, all over the place. Then if you go up that pyramid, I say, okay, now you go up another level in that pyramid, and that's where the really strong students are. So now it gets smaller, right? The number of kids who are good athletes, and then the number of kids who are good athletes and good students. Then you get to the top of the pyramid, and you got the kids who are good athletes, good students, and, oh, by the way, happen to be high character kids also. I mean, and that's where most coaches want to recruit, right? So, in the years that I've done this, my time at Fairport, I've built some incredibly talented athletes, same here at McQuaid. It saddens me sometimes when kids are too late to the academic table. They just think that, I'm a really talented athlete, and as a result, things are going to work out for me. And the stark reality is it doesn't oftentimes. Can you just talk a little bit about that? I'm sure, you guys want those kids at the top of that pyramid.
Yeah, it goes to show you, if you can handle being a great athlete and being a great student, you've got everything that people want. You've got to be able to take care of business, and succeeding academically is part of it. You have to be really, really special. If kids or coaches are going to take you, and you're an academic risk. From that aspect, it's something I tell my kids. They're looking for opportunities to recruit someone else. Don't give them one. Don't give them a reason to recruit someone else. And if you're not there academically, I got to take a risk on this kid too much. I got to send that kid up to admissions. It's going to be risky. I can go with this kid that we know they've got the grades. And so, they're looking for reasons to pick someone else. Don't give them one. And academic is the first one that always comes up, because people just don't take care of that. So if you can focus on that and being a great athlete, what every coach wants. They want high caliber kids. They want you to be a part of the team and contributing athletically, and contributing to GPA. That's the dream. That's what everyone wants. And I think, from that aspect, that really is important.
Just a couple more things, just things that I've seen over the years. And, I always tell kids, apply the broken leg test to recruiting, meaning, let's say I'm a high school student. I fall in love with, let's say, St. Bonaventure. I fall in love with the baseball coach or lacrosse coach or whatever. And I say to kids, ask yourself if, let's say you break your leg, unfortunately, and you can't play. Are you still going to be happy at that institution? And if the answer is no, then you're probably not doing a really good, thorough job in your recruiting or your search. Any words of caution there? I think sometimes, kids fall in love with a coach, and that coach is on an upward trend and the coach is gone in a year or two. Just any advice you'd give to kids as they're trying to be really thorough in their search and their recruitment process?
Yeah, absolutely. It gets back to what I started with. Make sure you make the choice that fits you. I think it's I talk about, I give us 6 objectives as a department. Really thinking about these things, and first objective is educate. That's what we're here for. Second objective is compete. Third is embrace differences. I walk through life as a 6'6" black man. People don't have that same lens that I have. You're 6'3" and white, so your lens is different than mine, but it's okay. So embrace differences, nurture. That gets into making sure we're building the mind, body, and spirit, and then build community is the one. That's the one that we talk about. Be more than just part of a team. Be part of the university. Be part of the area. But build a community, because that's what's going to help you grow. Being part of the team that's a great aspect, but being part of something else helps you, because being part of a team shows that you have great skills. People can work with you. And then the last one's play the right way, is follow the rules. So those are the 6 things that I preach, that for us, if you come here, that's what I want you to be about, whether you're a student, whether you're a parent, or you're an employee. And so, but building community, if you can go someplace and you think I can build on top of sports, that's when you hit the sweet spot. Again, because sometimes sports gets taken away, but you still love it. If you're going to go play baseball and you go to a school that's got a great atmosphere for football or basketball, that's okay. Be a part of that. And if baseball was taken away, you still want to be a part of that. That's pretty cool too.
Right. I know you're at a Division I place, but can you talk just for a minute about like in a Division III institution, let's say like in the Rochester area, like a Nazareth College or a U of R, St. John Fisher, or Hobart, say, what role does a coach have, or how much play or pull does a coach have or influence in the admissions world? So let's say I'm not a Division I basketball kid, but let's say I'm a Division III kid, and Nazareth and the University of Rochester are recruiting me. Does the coach have a lot of influence in that, or?
Yes. So sometimes it often breaks down. They get a certain number of what they call admission slots. And if you're highly recruited, they're going to give you one of their slots. And so, I think back to my time at Syracuse. Coach Pasqualoni had 5 slots where he can get 5 kids in, no matter what their academics were. And so he was responsible for those 5 kids. And so if one of those kids failed out, the next year he got 4. And then instead of 5, he got 4. And so if another kid failed out, he got 3. And so it went all the way down to it reset to 0. But it works like that at Division III level as well. You get slots. And so, if the coach is giving out his 5 slots or 6 slots and you're still being recruited, they still have some influence where they say, hey, we're not slotting them, but this is someone we want for sure. And so, it happens at all levels. If you're going to go walk on a Division I can think of Duke lacrosse. We support their admission, but we've given up all our slots. And so that's how it generally works in athletics. And if you think back to, everyone talks about, college, kids getting paid and all that. You think back to the Varsity Blues scandal. What did they do? They used athletics in their slots to get their kids in great schools. And so that's the aspect you think about. That happens at all levels, but Division II, Division III, for sure they have influence. And because, college athletes help fill roles, they help with diversity, and they help make the school a little bit more well-rounded. So absolutely.
So just one last thing, and then I know you have a dinner party that you're trying to get to, so I won't keep you much longer. But one last thing, can you just kind of address letters of intent? I think there's a little bit of confusion around that. What does a letter of intent mean? Does it vary from sport to sport?
Yeah, it doesn't vary from sport to sport. So letter of intent, it's I think it's separate from the NCAA. But once you sign a letter of intent, it's binding that says I'm going to this school. Once you sign it, you're obligated to enroll in that school unless you say, hey, petition to let me out of that school. There could be a coaching change, but, essentially a letter of intent is nothing short of a contract saying, hey, I'm going to attend St. Bonaventure. And if we made a coaching change in women's soccer, you signed a letter of intent, it behooves us, because we made a change, to let you out. You can go somewhere else if you don't like that coach, or if from that standpoint. But sometimes schools won't let people out of their letters of intent from that standpoint. But it helps you say, and it helps the coach know once you sign, I don't have to keep recruiting because everyone loves to do the press conference and the verbal and the Instagram and the, hey, I'm going here, but that doesn't mean anything until you sign the letter of intent.
Exactly. That's what I was hoping you would address. I mean, until it gets to the point where a student athlete signs a letter of intent, which is basically a formal contract that the college is saying, this is the amount of scholarship money, athletic scholarship money we're going to award you, and you sign it. Up until that point, nothing is really finalized. And I hear a lot of kids saying, well, I gave a verbal commitment to, school X, or they committed to me, but nothing is finalized. I mean, I could I'm 64 years old. I could give a verbal commitment someplace, right? If I really wanted to. Just kidding. But we hear that all the time.
Right? I'll take you for a pickleball team. A varsity pickleball.
But I just think it's important to understand that's when things get really serious. That's when things are finalized, when that national letter of intent is signed.
Yeah, and I think absolutely right. And I think the other key points that I'll tell, from the students, the student athletes, to the parents, body language means a ton. People look at that. If you're screaming and yelling at other kids on other teams, that means something. We all scream and yell at refs, but don't be the person that's screaming and yelling. And I think it's from that aspect. Coaches look at all that. If you're the one screaming to your kid out on the court or what to do, coaches don't want to deal with that. And so, I figured out a way to talk to my kids, hey, if I stand up, that means I want to tell you something. Otherwise, I'm going to let you play because coach is going to tell you what to do. I can help you figure something out, see something you don't see, but I'm not going to be on the court screaming and yelling, hey, Trey, do this, force them left. If I stand up, that means, find me at somebody and I'll tell you something I see that you don't see. Your coach may not see, but from the standpoint, if you're the parent or if you're the kid on the court looking at your parent for affirmation for everything, sometimes that takes it off. And you have a bad play and your body language sulks. I work with I tell my kids all the time, and fix it. Fix your face from that standpoint because it means a lot, and it just helps you. It's they're looking for reasons to go recruit someone else. Don't give them more. And so, body language means a lot because your attitude, everyone control effort and attitude. Athletic ability you can't control, but effort and attitude you can control. And I think that's the aspect that's really important that sets you apart because everyone's good. You're on a team, you're good. And so what sets you apart is your effort and your attitude.
Joe, thanks. I really appreciate it. I know you have an event at your house tonight, and taking an hour out of your time for us is really appreciative. Just to parents out there, I just want to let you know that guys like Joe are invaluable, and they're in the business for the right reason. And I've known Joe for a long time, and he'll do anything to help kids. And St. Bonaventure has a big presence in Rochester, and St. Bonaventure is in pretty good hands with guys like you in charge of different programs. So thank you immensely. I also want to say to parents out there that we're really fortunate, here at McQuaid, where I think we have a really talented bunch of coaches who have their minds and their hearts in the right place, and they want to see kids be successful. And I think they're good judges of talent. And from a college counselor's perspective, I love the fact that I can work closely with all the coaches as kids go through the recruiting process and looking for the right fit athletically and academically. So it's a good place to be. And I would hope as parents that you would reach out to the counselors and or the coaches as your sons go through in the process in hopes of playing at the collegiate level. All right. So Joe, again, thanks so much. Enjoy your
good luck,
dinner party.
everybody.
Always good to see you. Thank you so
good luck,
much.
Except for when you play Fairport. Take care.
We bleed Fairport red, right? Thanks, Joe. And again, for parents, we have one other presentation tonight. Jan Schutzau will be here at 7:30 to give us an overview of financial aid. So we'll be back on at 7:30. Thank you. Hello, Jan Schutzow.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to meet with you guys and share some information with all your families tonight.
Well, thank you. So we are live. We are so for parents out there, again, thank you for joining us. This is our third and final presentation of this evening. Again, we have three presentations tomorrow night and 3 additional presentations on Thursday night. And again, if you're unable to join us in person, all of our presentations from this week will be posted to the McQuaid website the day after the presentation. So again, Jan, thanks for taking the time out of your incredibly busy time of in the financial aid office, I'm sure. But I appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. Jan is the executive director of financial aid at Hamilton College. Prior to Hamilton College, Jan served in a similar role at Nazareth College. And she's been a friend of us here at McQuaid and over the years. And again, I really respect your knowledge and what you're going to share with our parents. So I am going to mute myself, but I'll be right here and listening. Okay. And I'm going to turn everyone over to you. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, John, so much. Good evening, everyone. Let me share my screen, John. You can tell me it's working properly. Does that look good, John?
Yeah, it's fine. Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy evening and holiday season to spend the evening with me tonight to go over some high-level financial aid processing information for you. So here's my contact information, and feel free to give me a buzz if you have any questions. And tonight's agenda, we will review a lot of the FAFSA information and the FAFSA processing information for you. And it begins with the FSA, the Federal Student Aid ID, and FAFSA application, the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA. And then I'll share with you what the FAFSA is calculating, which is primarily the EFC, or expected family contribution. And then I will share how schools will determine your student's financial need, what type of aid exists in your financial aid award letters that you will see, and some overall closing comments. So tonight's presentation is focused on the federal FAFSA rules as they exist today, this year. They will be changing slightly in the 24-25 academic year, but right now all this information is current for 23-24 and 22-23 that we're currently in. And if our families are attending tonight are sophomores and juniors, these are applications that you cannot complete just yet. You will complete these applications in the senior year of high school, but it's good to hear the information early and be able to understand it a little bit more clearly. So as far as the Federal Student Aid ID, this is a personal username and password that you create on the federal website to identify the student and a parent who will be signing the FAFSA. It's your unique identifier, and you'll continue to use your FSA ID throughout your enrollment, college enrollment, every year to sign your FAFSA, and parents will use your FSA ID every year if they choose to borrow a Parent Plus loan. That's how you log into the system to make that application. So we'll talk about the FSA ID and the FAFSA application right now. You can create your FSA ID at the federal website, fsa.ed.gov and studentaid.gov. And again, it's a unique password for the student and one for the parent. The parent and student cannot use the same FSA ID. It has to be unique and distinct. And they're gonna, in the setup, they're gonna ask for basic demographic information, emails, username. You can create a password and confirm it. And if you show the text box, then you'll be able to see the data, take a picture of it, and have it on your phone for next year's reference when you file the FAFSA again. Again, it has to be a unique username and password, and with a unique email address. So again, as parents, sometimes we like to control all the information, and we may want to enter our email address on the student ID and the parent ID, and the feds won't like that. They want a unique email address for each individual FSA ID. You can create your FSA ID a little earlier before you actually sign your FAFSA. That would be helpful because it will go through the back end processing with the Homeland Security and Social Security Administration to vet out that you are a unique user and don't have an FSA ID similar to anyone else. So again, helpful little tips to create your ID to sign the FAFSA early on before you begin the process. Once you've done that part, you can create the FAFSA and sign the FAFSA online at FAFSA.gov, not FAFSA.com. So again, a lot of the federal websites are ending in .gov, and you know that that's the official site. The FAFSA.com website will ask for a credit card to enter a fee to file the FAFSA. So you know that you're on the wrong website if they're asking for any money to file the FAFSA. So again, speaking from a senior high school student who would be entering college in the fall of 23 for the 23-24 academic year, you would complete the FAFSA for 23-24, which just opened up on October 1. The FAFSA opens up every single year on October 1. And so you can do a renewal FAFSA as you become a sophomore, junior, and senior beginning October 1 of every academic year. And you would start at the start here. And also, if you want to file the FAFSA on your mobile app, you're able to do that. There's an app, My Student Aid mobile app. So students and or parents can file via their mobile device. So you want to log in at FAFSA.gov or studentaid.gov. They're one and the same. You can launch the FAFSA on either website. And you want to click that you are the user. You want to identify your role. Are you the user, the student, or are you the parent or guardian for the student? And enter your FSA ID. If you fail to create it earlier and you begin the FAFSA, you have an opportunity to click on the Create One Now hyperlink and create your ID at this point in time also. So as a current senior student filing the FAFSA for the 23-24 year, you want to choose the 23-24 FAFSA. There will always be 2 FAFSAs available for you to sign for our sophomore and junior families. As you begin this process in a few years from now, make sure that you're actually selecting the right FAFSA, because our current enrolled students have the opportunity to file the 22-23 FAFSA all the way through June 30th of 23. So there's a large window of time to file the FAFSA. You just want to make sure you're filing the correct one. And there is a 1-800 number, and the Student Aid Help website is available for you if you have any questions when you're completing your FAFSA. So what is the FAFSA collecting? It's basically family personal information, parents' income and assets, and student income and assets to calculate what's called an expected family contribution number. And as we'll see later on in the presentation, that this EFC is used to calculate the student's demonstrated need and thus their financial aid package. So when you complete the FAFSA for 23-24, you should be using prior year income. So in that regard, it would be the 2021 tax return information. So again, in future use, when you begin filing the FAFSA, you always want to use 2 years prior income. And that was intentional so that it would create ease of filing for our families, in the sense that they did not have to scurry and get their tax return done right away in early January, February months before the FAFSA was to be filed. So it's intentional that they use prior year income. Basically, the FAFSA is made up of 2 sections, a student section and a parent section. And they ask very similar information under each section. Basically, under the student section, you want to begin with basic demographic information, and you want to indicate that your child is a first-year never attended student. enrolling in the future year, and that they're completing a bachelor's degree or associate's degree, whatever may be applicable. And then you want to enter the 2021 tax return information. It's helpful if you have your prior year tax return near you and your W-2, so you have all the Social Security numbers and income information and wage information handy and available. You also want to list your current, as of the day you're filing, cash, checking and savings, and investment value on your FAFSA. And then there will be some dependency information and questions regarding the student section, just to confirm that the student is a dependent on mom and dad's income and information. Under the parent section, again, it begins with demographics. And parents, the parent that should be on the FAFSA currently is the parent that the child resides with more than 50% of the time in the prior 12 months from filing the FAFSA, the previous 12 months. What parent did the child live with more often? And that is the parent that should be on the FAFSA in any divorce or separated situation. Other than that, you want your parents, biological parents, step parents, adoptive parents, and again, as I mentioned, custodial parent is the parent that the child lived with more than 50% of the year. As of the day you're filing the FAFSA, parents should indicate their marital status: married, separated, divorced, widowed, whatever it may be as of that day. And again, parents are also going to input their 2021 tax return information into the FAFSA. And also they will list their cash, checking, and savings. Now, on the FAFSA, it does not ask you to report retirement income or home equity on your primary home, but we will learn in a few slides that may be asked on a different application called the CSS profile. So this is some basic information that the FAFSA is collecting to calculate that EFC number, which is the expected family contribution number. Because ultimately the federal methodology of awarding aid believes that the parents are the first provider of educational assistance and paying educational expenses. So when you're in the FAFSA, don't panic about entering all these income numbers. You have an opportunity to use the IRS data retrieval tool, which is a nice tool the federal government created a few years ago that will automatically ask your authorization to extract your filed tax return from the IRS into the FAFSA. And this is very helpful if you do this, because it will minimize errors, it will speed up the process for you, and it will also reduce the likelihood of what we call federal verification. Oftentimes the federal government will randomly select a FAFSA for what is called verification. And in that process, families and students would have to document their tax return information and their household information. But using the IRS data retrieval tool will minimize that selection. And again, as I mentioned, it's highly recommended that you use the IRS data retrieval tool. And there's some situations where tax filing status would not allow families to use it, but majority of families are able to use it. And two things that won't roll over when you extract it from the tax returns, and an opportunity to make an adjustment is you may get a pop-up that says, in this data that we extracted, was any of this income from a retirement rollover? And if that's the case, then you would indicate yes, and the dollar amount of the 1099-R or rollover from the previous year. If you miss that pop-up box asking you that information, not to panic. You can always call your financial aid office and review this information with them. But basically, the FAFSA will extract any rollovers, any 401k rollovers is a source of income to be considered in the EFC. Some guidance on filing the FAFSA. Again, custodial parents should be the parents on the FAFSA. The parent and the custodial parent is the parent that the child lives with most in the previous 12 months. Step parent income and assets must be included in the FAFSA. So biological parent may be remarried, and there may be a belief that step parent is not obligated to contribute towards the educational expenses, but the Department of Ed sees that differently. So step parent income is required to be reported on the FAFSA. Assets are reported as of the day of the filing of FAFSA, and they're not updated if they something changes to them the next day. And marital status is reported as of the day of filing the FAFSA. So if you are currently separated or divorced at the time of filing the FAFSA, but you filed a joint return in the prior year of 21, that's when you have an opportunity to manually extract out these other spouse's income and taxes paid and wages, and manually enter that information on the FAFSA. But if you're not comfortable with that, you can call your financial aid office and they can step you through it. But if you're separated or divorced after the FAFSA is filing, then you need to contact the financial aid office, and they have the authority to separate out the adjusted gross income and wages with appropriate documentation, proof of separate living residences. Some errors that pop up on the FAFSA filing that we notice is incorrect Social Security numbers. That's why I recommended that you have your 2021 tax return handy, so you can input the Social Security numbers accurately for all parties involved. Another possible incorrect marital status pops up, and oftentimes it's regarding a current recent divorce or separation. So the previous slide gave you some guidance on that. Sometimes families want to exclude the income from step parents, and that does need to be reported. And also on the FAFSA, they're going to ask for untaxed income, such as child support received, pension payments, not the value of your pension, but payments that you paid into it in the prior year, and any untaxed portions of health savings accounts, because those are seen as untaxed income that could be used towards your educational expenses. So the FAFSA is going to use a percentage of those. And correctly list your household size and the number of members in the house in college. And sometimes parents report incorrectly their 401k or their primary home equity. And again, the FAFSA doesn't require those items, so you want to make sure you're excluding that as an asset on the FAFSA. Now, that was all information about what the FAFSA is collecting, some helpful tips on how to use the information to complete it, and the IRS data retrieval tool. And now we're going to talk about some other applications that oftentimes schools are going to request if you're seeking financial aid assistance. The first one is the College Scholarship Service, or CSS profile. This is an application administered from the College Board, and there's the website that you completed, collegeboard.com. And this is a more detailed financial aid application in the sense that it's going to ask income and asset information from all family members, including the student, parent, non-custodial parent, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to gather all this information that sometimes the FAFSA is excluding. It's going to ask about value of your retirement account, value home equity in your primary home, value of your business, non-custodial parent income and assets. So it's collecting all the financial aid data to be a more comprehensive analysis of resources available to pay educational expenses. The CSS profile, there is a charge to send to each college. I believe it's around $25 per school. So you don't want to automatically use or file the profile unless your school is requesting it. Oftentimes, schools that want the CSS profile meet all or a lion's share of the students' demonstrated need. So that's why they want more information about all available resources before they meet a student's need with all institutional resources. Another application to file in the financial aid process is called the New York State TAP application. This is for our New York State residents. This is a scholarship for students that live in New York and attended a New York high school and continue to attend a New York State college or university. And it's eligible for families that have a New York State net taxable income of $80,000 or less. The scholarship grant will range from $500 up to $5,665. And this is an application that can be filed at the end of the FAFSA. There is a box that says, do you want to complete your New York, or not New York State, but it says, do you want to complete your state application? You won't see the term New York State. You won't see the term TAP on there because the FAFSA is a federal form across all states. So they're not going to identify each state's internal application name. So you want to say yes to complete the state application. And a lot of the FAFSA information will automatically transfer over to your TAP application, your state application, and make the process a little easier for you. If you miss that opportunity at the time you're filing the FAFSA, not to panic. You have to let the FAFSA process through in about 3 days and then go back directly to the New York State TAP website and submit your TAP application. Because part of the requirements for TAP is you have a completed FAFSA on file. So that was the hard part. That is the stressful part for families and students to complete all those applications. The FAFSA, the profile possibly, and the New York State TAP application for our New York State residents. Now your job is over, other than watching for emails from colleges asking for additional documents. But generally your process is done. The information has been sent to your schools. And now the school will determine the student's financial need and financial aid award packages. So that's the role of your financial aid offices. We're going to receive your FAFSA data and determine need and send you a response in regards to a financial aid package. And that could happen immediately, or it may be delayed in the sense that it will be released at certain times in the cycle, whether you're an ED, early decision applicant, regular decision applicant. So they may not happen immediately after filing the financial aid applications. So let's talk a little bit more about what the EFC. The FAFSA is generating the EFC. The College Board, the CSS profile, is giving your institutions more information about resources to determine need. But the EFC is coming right from the FAFSA. And that number can be anywhere from 0 all the way up to 99999. So it's really unique to the family resources that are reported on the FAFSA. It is not necessarily an indication of available cash to meet college costs, but instead it is an index. It is a number to determine the student's federal need-based aid eligibility. And the types of federal need-based aid include the Pell Grant, subsidized loans, a federal SEOG, high need grant, and federal work study. So if the EFC is in a certain range, the student is going to be able to eligible for one of those federal or all of those federal resources. And again, there's 4 main components to calculate the EFC from the FAFSA. It's looking at the parents' income and assets, the student's income and assets, and the household size, number of people in the household. So now we're going to get into the weeds a little bit more just to describe what the FAFSA is really looking at. Starting with the parent income, we're going to look at the total income, taxable and untaxable. And then we're going to subtract the exclusions, which are child support paid, because that is an expense for a parent. And then we subtract taxes, we subtract an income allowance protection and an employment allowance, and that will generate and calculate the available income. So again, it's just to highlight that 100% of your income is not used in the FAFSA formula. It's a calculation. And we'll do the same thing with the assets, the parents' reported assets, starting with the cash savings that they reported, plus any value of farm or business worth regarding a business with more than 100 employees. Any business with less than 100 employees is not reported on the FAFSA. And then they'll count in any equity in other investments, not the primary house. But it does ask for the value of the 529s for all children in the household. And then from that, it subtracts an allowance for protection against savings and a conversion of 12%. So that's a rough estimate of the assets. And then the FAFSA adds those 2 numbers, the available income, contribution from assets, creates the parent EFC contribution. Then they do the same thing with the student income. Starts with the total income from taxable and untaxed income. And then they also subtract any exclusions such as federal work study or co-op wages. So this is a common misnomer for families saying, oh, I don't want my child to work federal work study because it's going to hurt them on the FAFSA the next year. And that is not the case. We can see here that federal work studies earnings are subtracted from available income in calculating the EFC. Then the student is also protected from any taxes that they have to pay, an income protection of $7,000. So basically, if your child earns less than $7,040 in this academic year allowance, none of the student income is used towards the EFC calculation. So again, a common misunderstanding that parents don't want their child to work at all because the income is going to hurt them on the FAFSA the next year. And as we can see, work study earnings don't hurt the student, and any income under 7,000 doesn't hurt the student. Then the FAFSA is going to look at the student's assets, starting with cash and savings, adding any value of a business if the student owns it, and a conversion of 20%. And that's what they'll use towards the EFC calculation. So that's a lot of in the weeds process information for you. Let's look at a couple examples. In this example, we are a family of 5, 1 in college. Total income is 120, parent assets are 0. There's the wages for parent 1 and parent 2 that's used, and income for the student is way under the $7,000 mark, and assets are 300. So in this case, the EFC in this example is about $18,427. Here's another example of 2 in the family, 1 in college, divorced parent, income's $36,005, parent assets is 0, and student wages and savings are 0. So this is an example of a high need student with a family contribution of 0. So this student will be eligible for Max Pell, Max TAP, et cetera, et cetera. So if we talked about the forms you fill out, we talked about the number that the FAFSA is calculating, which is the EFC. Now we're going to share how your schools use that EFC and profile information to determine your student's financial need. And you're going to hear that word a lot in your enrollment process and your enrollment cycle, because our financial aid peers reference it as, oh, you're not eligible for that type of aid because the student does not have the financial need for it. So let's explain that a little bit for you. So it's a common formula to determine a student's need. It begins with the cost of attendance for each school. That's the annual cost of attendance minus the EFC, the expected family contribution, equals the student's financial need. So let's define cost of attendance a little bit more for you. So the tuition cost of attendance currently involves these main components: tuition and fees, room and board, and in future and in the next year, that will be named housing and food, which is a little bit more representative of what it actually is. Books and supplies, transportation, miscellaneous and personal expenses, and loan fees. So these items add up to the annual cost of attendance at that particular school. And you can see your cost of attendance will vary depending on the type of school that you choose to apply to. So your need varies based on the cost. As we shared before, need begins with cost of attendance minus the EFC equals need. So as this is an example, as your costs change, but your EFC is consistent, your financial need will vary. For example, here is a highly selective school, cost of attendance $65,000 minus an EFC of $15,000 equals a need of $50,000. Then we have our medium private of $45,000 cost minus the $15,000 EFC, the need is $30,000. And then here's an example of our state system, our state school systems. And the need is cost of attendance is 20 minus the EFC of 5,000 equal 15,000 equals a need of 5. So you can see your need is going to change based on the costs. And I'm just highlighting that because you may see differences in your award letter of, oh, my son or daughter didn't receive federal work study at the school. And it's probably because there wasn't room in their financial need calculation to receive that type of need-based aid from the federal government. So once we shared how need is calculated, let me now share with you how your financial aid award letter will look and what type of aid you may see. So financial aid is determined, these are the main sources. It's either scholarships and grants, loans, or work study. And scholarships are gift money, grants or gift money, do not have to be paid back. The loans and the work study are considered self-help aid in the sense that it is a little bit of buy-in from the student is in the terms of borrowing during their enrollment, the maximum federal student loan that they may be able to borrow. And federal work study is they're working on campus or working during their enrollment to help offset some of their educational expenses. Within the main types of aid, scholarships and grants, loans, or work study, we have different buckets: merit-based, need-based, and non-need-based. So again, you may hear those terms as you go through this process. Merit-based is based on the student's academic performance in high school, and it has nothing to do with their financial need. Need-based aid does have to do with their financial need, and that's going to be based on their FAFSA filing information, their profile, and how the school determines the need and what eligibility they have to provide in federal or institutional resources. And then non-need-based aid will be programmatic scholarships, talent scholarships, outside scholarships, and aren't need-based, et cetera, et cetera. So under the free money, the gift money, as I mentioned, we have scholarships and we have grants. So scholarships could come from the institution, they could come from New York State or the state scholarships that you may have in your area. New York State has a merit award, for example, up to $1,500 a year, or scholarships could be from private or outside resources. Grants also could come from the institution, and the federal government has the Pell Grant, the SEOG grant, and the TEACH grant. So those are all types of federal grants that your student may be eligible for. And for example, an EFC of 0 will yield the max Pell Grant currently at $68.95. And the Pell Grant amount will vary according to the the index of the EFC. Grants under the state system include the TAP is considered a grant, and then you always have your private outside grant opportunities. In regards to self-help aid, that is comprised of loans and work study. Let's chat a little bit more about the federal direct loan program. So filing the FAFSA allows access to the federal loan program for the student. And the Department of Ed does cap the amount of loan the student can borrow each year according to their academic level. So freshmen can borrow $3,500 in a sub loan and $2,000 unsub loan. The difference between sub and unsub is who is paying the interest while the student is enrolled in school. On a subsidized loan, it's interest-free all during their 4-year enrollment and during their 6-month grace period. But on an the government is subsidizing, is paying that interest for that student. On an unsubsidized loan, the government is not paying the interest. The student will be charged the interest. They're not required to make any repayments on it while they're enrolled, but interest is accruing from day one of disbursement in their freshman year and continuing on. As a sophomore, students can borrow $4,500 sub and $2,000 unsub. So it's basically $5,500 the first year, $6,500 the second year, $7,500 third year, and $7,500 the fourth year, combined of sub and unsub max as disclosed here. The current rate on these types of federal student loans is 4.99 fixed, and there is a slight 1% origination fee that the government keeps for processing the loan to the students. In addition to federal loans, the students may borrow institutional or private loans. Now, these are loans from outside sources, and the student is eligible to shop around for the best terms and interest rates. Under the federal work study program, There's also two types. Under work study, there's federal and there's institutional. So under the federal work study, a student has to have financial need to be eligible for it. Campus employment or institutional work study does not have to have financial needs. So either way, your child could work during their college experience. In addition to the scholarships, grants, and loans that you'll see, there's outside or additional financing options. Perhaps the initial award package, there is a gap according to the college's cost minus the aid that they're presenting to you, and there's a balance due that they're anticipating for that academic year. Oftentimes, parents and families borrow to pay that balance due. You have a few options. There's the Federal Parent Plus loan, which is a loan in mom or dad's name. And mom or dad would apply directly online with the federal government at the studentaid.gov website. They would log in with their FSA ID number that I mentioned early on in the presentation and submit the application. It's a very simple application, and the underwriting is very minimal. Basically, you'll be asked if it's okay if they run a credit report. If you pay your bills on time and have a good credit score rating, the Department of Ed will highly approve you. That's about it. You'll know instantly in this application process if you're approved. And repayment begins after the child has graduated and a 6-month grace period, and then you start paying back these federal student loans. You borrow the federal loan every single year. You can't borrow 4 years up front in the freshman year. You have to submit an application every single year. The current rate is 7.54% fixed with a 4% origination fee. In addition to the Parent Plus loan, perhaps you don't want to borrow, but you have cash flow to handle a little bit larger monthly payment. Typically, all schools have an interest-free payment plan where they will divide the fall balance by 5 payments, and they'll divide the spring balance by 5 payments, and you sign a contract to make those required payments. Another way to finance the balance due is a private alternative loan. This is from different outside lenders according to the market. You're able to apply directly with that lender. They will inform the school of the approval. The school will add the loan to the student financial aid record, and the student begins repayment on the private loans 6 months after graduation. Similar to all the other loans I just talked about, plus loan, student loan, and private loan all begin after the child has graduated and has completed the 6-month grace period. So to wrap up with some closing comments, we've gone through a lot of information in a brief, short period of time, but I just wanted to expose you to some of the terms, the applications, their information that they're asking on those applications. So things to remember, file applications on time, whether you're going to be an early decision applicant or a regular decision applicant. Every school has a unique deadline that they want all the applications completed by. So make sure you're looking at those deadlines and adhering to them. Inform the financial aid office if there's any special circumstances regarding your income scenario. Keep in mind, we're asking for prior year income. And we understand that that may not reflect the current financial resources available current day. So that's when you have a conversation with the financial aid office, and they can do what's called a professional judgment with the proper supporting documentation to potentially use a current year or 1 prior year. For anyone filing the FAFSA for 23-24, you want to make sure you include 2021 income. Try to use a data retrieval at all possible and report current assets and marital status. After you complete the applications, watch your email for any corresponding information and communication from the Department of Ed or the school. And here's some additional information. General resources on studentaid.gov, collegeboard.com, New York State HESC for TAP, and some helpful scholarship search engines. I think every financial aid officer will encourage students to seek outside scholarships to minimize everybody's debt burden. And again, my contact information available. And that sums up our presentation for tonight. John, if you have any follow-up questions or anything?
Jan, thanks. Thanks for taking a fairly complex system, and a system that sometimes can be daunting and intimidating, and making it understandable. Any just last minute words of advice you'd give to someone like a parent of, let's say, a sophomore or a junior who's just starting to think about the process and has some uncertainties about the cost of attendance and how the system will work out?
I would say there's a lot of information on every college's website. Every college also has to have a net price calculator. So that is a great resource for families to get an early assessment and estimate of what it's going to cost to go to that school. So yeah, I would highly recommend using those to get a baseline understanding, because you want to be fully informed in this process. You want to understand that there is a financial obligation that the parents have and the family has. So you don't want to be surprised by that. You don't want to fall in love with a school and then only to find out you can't afford to go there.
Right. And I think that's the purpose of the net price calculator. That's net price calculator. Every college is mandated on their website to have a net price calculator. Mm-hmm. Some are fairly skimpy, others are very elaborate. But if you're early in the process, it's a great opportunity to plug in some of your financial data and get a sense as to what your expected family contribution might be.
Right.
So I think I would really strongly encourage you to be aware of net price calculators. The other word of advice I would give you, just from someone who's done this for a long time, is as parents, be mindful of the wide disparity in cost of attendance from the elite private schools to the public schools, and don't get scared off initially by the sticker price. I think the system is a good one for someone who's had 4 kids of my own go through the system. I think you'll find it's fair and it works, but you have to engage in the process. You have to be on time. And you have to fill out the forms. And I think the danger sometimes in financial aid is people hear from their neighbors or their coworkers or their friends, "Oh, I didn't get any aid, so I wouldn't even bother doing it if I were you." And the only way you're guaranteed not to get any aid is don't engage in the system.
Right. I agree wholeheartedly. And I would say my only other tip is, don't assume you're not going to qualify for any aid. At least do the applications for the first year. Make sure you have a fully completed process, and if it ends up that you're not eligible for any of the federal resources or institutional aid, at least you know, and then you don't have to continue bothering completing the applications. But at least the freshman year, make sure you complete all the financial aid applications, and make sure you are being reviewed for any resource possible.
And the only other point that I would make to parents is this. I tell the counselors in our office that we are not financial advisors, and I caution all of us not to play the role of financial advisors. That's not our job. And I'd hate for any of us to give you any of our parents bad financial aid information. Oftentimes I'll get asked by parents, what can I do with my my 529 or my 403B, or where can I put money to make my expected family contribution smaller? And I just don't think it's wise or good practice for us as counselors to engage in those conversations at all.
Right.
There are accountants, financial planners, plenty of people out there. One of the things that I really respect, Jan, from you and from other financial aid professionals in the Rochester area is that your willingness and their willingness to talk to people when they have extenuating circumstances, and to give them some sage advice in terms of the financial aid process. So I know you've done that for years, and you give your contact information out willingly. So I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a unique breed in the sense that we like to help all people achieve their dream of education.
Yeah, and like I said, I really found that to be true, in a lot of places. So thank you for doing that. So again, thank you for extending your day. I know you've had a long day, and I know in the financial aid world, December is not a light time. So appreciate you doing that. For parents that are out there, again, we're back tomorrow night with 3 other presentations. Our first presentation tomorrow night starts at 5:30. Where John Baines, a retired English teacher from Fairport High School and Our Lady of Mercy, will be joining me to talk about creative approaches to writing the college essay. At 6:30, Ian Mortimer, who is now the president at the newly founded Golisano Institute, We'll be on to talk about connecting future career opportunities with college major selections. And at 7:30, our own college counselor, Jeff Griffin, will be on to talk about Naviance and how we use that as a college planning tool for students and parents. So again, thank you again, Jan. Appreciate it. And parents, hopefully we'll see you all again tomorrow night.
Thank you,
Thank
John.
you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Happy
Bye now.
holidays, everybody.
You too. Thanks.